Now, today it is my pleasure to introduce a good friend and alumnus of Young America's Foundation, Jason Mattera. Jason is a New York Times best-selling author and has now authored 3 books. The first, titled Obama Zombies, How the Liberal Machine Brainwashed My Generation, fitting for Halloween today, and Hollywood Hypocrites, the devastating truth about Obama's biggest backers. Today, we have all gathered here to hear about Jason's newest book, Crapitalism, excuse my language, liberals who make millions swiping your tax dollars. Jason is well known for his ambush interviews on top liberals, including Vice President Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Michael Bloomberg, and a countless number of others, and they have become internet legends. Currently, Jason is the publisher of news and entertainment site, The Daily Surge, and we are so proud to work with our good friend Jason and to keep this continued relationship going. So please help me give a warm welcome to Jason Mattera.
Well, I want to thank Young America's Foundation for inviting me here today, this magnificent new facility they have. And it's always great to be back at the foundation. I worked with the foundation for many years, both as a student and then as an employee after I graduated college. So it always feels like I'm coming back home when I am with YAF, and they do just such great work. So it's always a privilege and a delight to be with them. So I want to thank you, Ron, for inviting me here. All right. So we're here to talk about crapitalism. It's always interesting doing interviews, both on radio and TV, and there's that little that smirk every time the host mentions it. It's like they have leeway now to say something they wouldn't usually say in an interview. But now they could. I guess the most interesting interviews, and the person who probably had the most enjoyment, I would say, was I was interviewed on the 700 Club on crapitalism. And Pat Robertson, who's still going strong doing interviews, and he really got a kick out of saying it over and over and over again. The reason why I went ahead and decided to write Crapitalism is obviously it's not a condemnation on capitalism, not at all. I mean, capitalism is the greatest economic system as ever known to man. It has built the middle class, it's created pathways out of poverty, and most importantly, capitalism has kept this man off food stamps, which alone must have saved taxpayers millions and millions of dollars. Unfortunately, today, we do not have a free market system. It is a system where you have people who have turned their political access into crony-fueled profit. And that is crapitalism, and that is a system that should be condemned. Crapitalism has forced us to subsidize goods and services that we would not have otherwise. It has allowed the rich and famous to become even more rich and famous, but at our expense. And most disturbingly, it's created 2 classes of citizens, those who benefit from crony connections and those who do not. And that is an inversion of the rule of law. It is cashing in on that political access and using it to rig the game in your favor. And that is something I undertook in writing Crapitalism, to expose some of the more egregious violators. Some are household names and some are not, but they all have that same common thread, and that is leveraging those connections to minimize their exposure but maximize ours. So what is a crapitalist? We can start out. And my definition is a well-connected crony, the powers that be, who scores big bucks at taxpayer expense. And in a variety of ways, we hear a lot about these phony green energy companies that go bust. Crapitalism at its finest, building glitzy new sports stadiums for some billionaire sports owner, and taxpayers are footing the bill for that. Or it's little-known tax credits that actually bankroll Hollywood movies around the country. So not only are we going and shelling out whatever it is now, 15, 16 bucks for a movie, but generally, and in 40 states at least, there's actual subsidies going to produce these movies. It's using the government to rig the game in their favor, the capitalist favor, and leaving taxpayers holding the bill. The book has 27 chapters on 27 different cronies. They all have the same theme of picking our pockets. Now, we're not going to go through all 27 individuals. That's what you getting the book and going through them yourself is for. But I wanted to highlight some of, every single one is an egregious violator, so I'm not going to say one is worse than the next, but some who I really enjoyed writing about and researching. And again, some of these people will be household names we'll all recognize, such as this man, the self-appointed best rapper alive, Jay-Z. And Jay-Z is an interesting individual. He'll go on television, and early in the Occupy Wall Street movement, he was feigning concern about the haves and the have-nots. I remember him on Bill Maher's show talking about wealth disparity. Jay-Z talking about wealth disparity in America. And he's said that it was getting to such a stark point that no amount of police would be able to solve the problem. He's also, of course, showed up and gave initial support of the Occupy Wall Street movement. It was interesting because Jay-Z has these partnerships, interesting partnerships, that sort of belies his concern for the working man, the little guy in society. He is partners with the man all the way on it would be on the right, the bald guy, David Rosenberg. David Rosenberg, who runs an investment firm that Jay-Z also invests with called Gain Global Investments. David Rosenberg's company, he runs an Ohio-based collection agency that has been involved in a number of federal and state investigations for abusive collection tactics, such as calling people who have resolved their debt decades earlier and trying to get that money, more money from them, or suggesting that they were lawyers and they needed representation. There have been dozens of suits against David Rosenberg's company, Jay-Z's business partner, and Rosenberg has settled many of these lawsuits, suggesting that there certainly is something sketchy going on. If you're thinking that I included a picture of David Rosenberg because that's also a picture of Kim Kardashian, then you're just a very cynical individual. But Jay-Z primarily gets a spot in Crapitalism because he helped build a monument to capitalism in my stomping grounds, so Brooklyn, New York, downtown Brooklyn. Brooklyn now has a basketball team, the Brooklyn Nets. They moved over from across the bay from New Jersey, and Jay-Z was the one-man hype guy for this, the one-man PR machine in bringing attention to moving the Nets from New Jersey over to Brooklyn. He also partnered with a guy named Bruce Ratner. Who was a real estate developer in New York City. Now, Bruce Ratner saw where the Barclays Center sits, this new stadium. He saw an opportunity to build luxury apartments. The problem was that these luxury apartments Bruce Ratner wanted to build was sitting on land that was currently owned by other people. It was their property. So Bruce Ratner decided, well, how can I get these individuals off their land so I can build my luxury apartments? Well, one way he could do that was through the use of eminent domain. Unfortunately for him, you can't use eminent domain to kick people off their property for luxury apartments. So what did he decide to do? Well, you could use eminent domain to kick people off their land and have businesses relocate if you have a public good that includes a sporting arena, because of all the thousands of jobs and economic development it is supposed to bring. So that's where he got Jay-Z involved. Jay-Z became a minority shareholder of the Brooklyn Nets, also became a minority shareholder of the Barclays Center itself. So Bruce Ratner got his luxury apartments that are still ongoing and under construction. Jay-Z helped bring the Brooklyn Nets to Brooklyn, and New Yorkers were able to offer $760 million in government subsidies to help build this monstrosity, which, by the way, has been nicknamed the Rusty Turtle in downtown Brooklyn, also that Bruce Ratner can have his luxury apartments and Jay-Z can use his celebrity status to, by the way, rap